The next seed that I mentioned I wanted to plant is about branding. And I love telling this story because it's such a great, powerful example of brands. All of the examples I mentioned thus far relate to branding as well, as I'll show you. The first time I was ever asked to teach in China, I taught in a city that was described to me as a small college town, Zhengzhou, and I was told that it was 8 million people, so I learned what a small college town is like in China. In fact, I know there's some people on the line in the webinar from China, so it's nice to see you, and you know what I mean by this. And I spent some time in Beijing as well, and the woman who was showing me around said, tomorrow's our last day. We're going to be doing some things that are a little unusual. We're going to go to a place and try a very famous food called Chinese milkway. And I didn't really know what Chinese milkway was, but she was making a big deal about it, so I figured, all right, we might as well go. And I had been to the Great Wall of China. I'd seen the National Museum, the Forbidden City. And gradually throughout the day, I found myself, in an odd way, getting more and more excited about this thing called Chinese milkway, which, when she described it, sounded like plain yogurt. I didn't really even understand what the big deal was. But she said, we got to get up really early. I'm going to drive by your hotel in a taxi. We're going to have to fight the traffic because this purveyor of Chinese milkway only makes a certain amount, a limited amount, and when it's gone on this Saturday, it's done for the week and you won't have a chance to get it. So I thought, man, I don't want to go all the way to China and not have the opportunity to try this very famous Chinese milkway. And the weird thing was, throughout that evening, I found myself getting more anxious about, geez, they're going to run out, and yet it sounds like it's just plain yogurt. I didn't know what the big deal was. But sure enough, we got to the place where they were serving it, and we saw this line here of long line of people in this old section of Beijing, and my heart kind of sank, thinking, man, I'm not going to get this Chinese milkway. I went all the way here. I saw the Great Wall of China, but it sounds like it's really important for me to try this milkway. And so we get to the front of the line, and thankfully we saw this. We saw this cute little package with this cow on it. It says, when you cheese. I'm not really sure what that even means. And I felt so satisfied that we could try this product, even though it tasted, sure enough, just like plain yogurt. So we're packing up to go, and we start moving along. My tour guide is taking me down the block, and I see this store right next door, and I don't know Mandarin, so I had to ask, what does this mean, this sign at the top? And she says, oh, what do they sell there? They sell Chinese milkway. And I said, hold on a minute. You had me get up really early this morning. We fought traffic in a taxi cab. We got to the line. We waited in line, all to try this milkway. Why didn't we just skip all that and go to this store and try their Chinese milkway? And she said, and I'll never forget it, she said, you know, I'm not really sure how to describe this phenomenon, but nobody really wants this milkway. Everybody just wants this. And I laughed because, of course, it was such a powerful example of the power of a brand. And so I encourage all of you, and in the workshops and in my other work, I talk a lot more about branding and what I learned at P&G about it, but sometimes it's in the oddest places that we learn about the power of brands. And here's the lineup of all the ones we've discussed so far. And frankly, although I mentioned the power of G-Form's technology, over time, the power of G-Form's brand, I think, is going to be much more valuable in terms of the overall value of the company. Runa, you could imagine there may be some big companies out there looking to buy them, and there are. It's as much for their brand that they've nicely developed as it is for their supply chain. I don't need to talk to you about Tide and its power. It's now the biggest brand at P&G, and these couple of other ones at the bottom are very deliberately growing brands. So I'll just plant that seed and indicate that it's a very important part of the entrepreneurial process, even if it's not one that's front of mind. And that applies to non-consumer products too, which I know are on some of your minds too. Medical devices, healthcare services. Whether you know it or not, you can either deliberately create and develop and nourish and nurture your own brand, or you can just let it happen, and I'm sure you can imagine which technique is the much more powerful.